Were you sleeping or what? All right, so welcome back to Contrarian Prepping. Hanging out with the chickens here. I wanted to go over in today's video. Sorry, my dogs, the chickens, they're kind of here for comic relief. This case has 2 earbuds in it, and I believe that this is one of the best preps ever. At least for me, that's true. And the reason why I say that is we all learn things differently. You might be a person that can read a book and you look at it and you're just like, I'm going to remember this forever. Thanks, Bogey. I'm going to remember this forever. You might be that person that tries to read and follow instruction in books, and you just can't do it. We're not all wired the same. We don't all work that way. We're not all looking at the same information. We're not all retaining the same amount of information when we read a book. Come on, Bogey. Come on. So what happens is, as we kind of go on these journeys and as we're going through this stuff and learning things, we need to figure out what works best for us. And I've definitely found that for myself, and I wanted to share that with you. Different information and how we all take it in differently. And, you know, you and I can read the exact same story or the exact same book or the exact same instructions. And you might be like, I have no idea what I just read. And I might be able to recite it backwards after reading it one time. By the way, that's not me. But it might be the other way around where I might not have any idea what I read, which is more true than false, and you might be able to recite that backwards after reading it one time. We all take in information a little bit differently. So the point that I'm making is one way that I have found that works very, very well for me is listening to, I don't even want to call it a prepper book, more like a storybook that's based on a prepping scenario. I'm sure some of you guys have tried this. I'm sure some of you guys might even have listened to the books that I'm going to recommend, or you might have, or you might have read a different kind of book, whatever the case may be. What I'm going to say is there's 2 things to me that matter in an audiobook. Number 1 is the narrator. The narrator is absolutely the most important. The other thing is the actual storyline. The storyline needs to be realistic, or as realistic as possible. Obviously, it's not a documentary. Books or anything on this subject, the first thing everybody always says is, yeah, I read 1 second after. And it's like, oh yeah, that's great. 1 second after, it wasn't a bad story by any means. I don't know, I struggled to get into it. I listened to it. I went through the whole book a couple of times actually, and it just, I don't know. Calm down, killer. What are you guys fighting for? Come on. But I went through the book a couple of times. It just never grabbed me the way that these other stories do. I never really felt like it was, for lack of a better term, I never felt relatable to the characters. The books that I would recommend, there are 2 of them. I'm roughly, 400 audiobooks plus or minus into this genre. I always have an earbud in. It's just kind of, I live that way. It's just how I am. And I can tell you that these 2 books, I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've listened to them over and over and over again. They just, to me, they don't get old. It's been very enlightening for me. And the reason why I say that is I find the characters to be relatable. And what I mean by relatable is it's almost like kind of putting yourself in the main character's shoes. They do dumb stuff. They do smart stuff. They do stuff that's clearly been thought out, and then they do stuff kind of on a whim that they're guessing, and I feel like most of us would be in a very similar situation to that. So without further ado, the 2 books that are at the top of my list, and honestly they're tied for first place. It kind of depends. I like the characters for different reasons, but I'll just say they're tied at first. So, Oop, that didn't quite get to the one that was squawking. There you go. So, and by the way, I need to throw this caveat out there. I am not sponsored. I am not endorsed. I am not blah, 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 whatever you want to call it. I have no financial gain. I have nothing to gain from this. I've emailed with the authors a couple of times in the past, back and forth, just, questions or whatever you want to call it. But outside of that, I have no affiliation with any of them. The first book, what I would also say is I see this book, the way that this book is written, I think it's very relatable to anyone in any situation. And I see this as a way to, a lot of people wonder, how do we get people, how do we know if somebody's into prepping? We can't talk about it. We can't, whatever. This is kind of a way that I have found that works for that. You can give somebody or gift somebody this book, or they get a free book with Audible every month, or whatever you want to call it. And that's kind of the way that goes. But with this, you can give someone this book and say, hey, just listen to this. Tell me what you think. We can talk about it when you're done. And, if they listen to it and they're like, yeah, you're kind of a weirdo. That was dumb. Well, that's kind of your answer. But this has actually worked for me more than once, just as a way to, come on, there. Just as a way to, for lack of a better term, passively bring prepping into a conversation, or even any kind of survival or preparedness, or whatever the case may be. So without further ado, the first book I will tell you it's by Franklin Horton. It's called The Borrowed World. This is the book that I tell people to read, just because the characters are very relatable. I don't want to spoil the book. I'm not gonna be spoiler alert and go into stuff, but I would strongly recommend to anyone to read that book, or to read or listen to. I'm not a big reader, so I listen to them on earbuds. Regardless of the level of quote-unquote prepper you think that you are, or, whether you're just starting out or you're very seasoned, you're going to hear things, but the thing is, you hear somebody tell a story about it, and it's very different to hear it than to just see, like, beans, bullets, Band-Aids, etc., etc. It's different to hear it being put into use, and you can kind of relate to it that way. The narrator of that series is Kevin Pierce. He's an amazing narrator. I actually saw a quote somewhere that he was the godfather of the apocalypse. He narrates all kinds of different books on the subject. He's got a great voice for it. So, the second book that I will throw out there, and again, these aren't in order. I would have to say, for me personally, I think this one kind of has a bit of an edge. If I was reading it, I think that The Borrowed World would win. If I were listening to it, though, I think that this series kind of edges it out. And this series is Going Home. It's written by A. American. That's a pen name, obviously. The author's name is Chris Weatherman. But again, I find the characters, I find the dialogue, I find the things that they say to each other. That's the kind of way that I talk to friends. And that's why I find this book to be so relatable. That's why I think that this book is, and again, I think that this one is kind of edges it out a bit. Both of these books are very long series. None of them are single standalone books. But what I will say is, in this book, Duke Fontaine hits his stride in book 2 more than book 1. I think he's like I said, I believe he is the best narrator that I've ever heard. But the big difference is, in book 2, he has, I can't even begin to guess. I'm round number, I would say there's probably 35, maybe 40 different characters that you come upon in book 2. And every single one of those characters has a unique voice. That is a skill. He is a very, very gifted narrator. Both of these books are and again, I'm not going to spoil it, but both of these books go over something that I think is, for lack of a better term, very plausible, but for different ways. At the end of the day, what happens in the books doesn't matter. Long story short, the grid is down in the country. But what I would foresee is one of the scenarios in either one of these books could very plausibly happen. If I have to pick one, I would say the scenario in the Borrowed World is something that it'll kind of make your skin crawl a bit. You're like, wow, that could really happen without that much effort. The weapons used in the Borrowed World and everything else, it's awesome the way that the plot line is written out for it. It's absolutely amazing how simple it would be for a country to do this. And what happens is when the grid goes down, everything changes, and it all changes very quickly. It all changes very fast. Because in these stories, you're sitting there and you're like, why would that guy do that? That's the dumbest. Why would he do? And then, you're like, oh, I never thought of that. That's kind of brilliant. I should probably add that to my stuff. That's super smart. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.